जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय राधा जय कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन यशोदानंदना ब्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरावनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी यशोदा ब्रज जनरंजना जय कुंज यशोदानंदना ब्रज जन रंजना यमुना तीरावनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी यशोदा जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe, Jaya Jagannatha Jagannatha Baladeva Jaya Subhadramai, Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Gurudarma Shila Harinam Sankirtan ki, Shila Prabhupada ki, Samveta Gaura Bhaktavinda ki, Tay Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 26. King Puranjan goes to the forest to hunt. Text number 14. Antapura striyo aprachat vimana iva vedisat apiva kushalam rama sa ishwarinam yata pura. Antapura striya aprachat vimana iva vedishat apiva kushalam rama sa ishwarinam yata pura. Antapura striyo aprachat vimana iva vedishat apiva kushalam rama saishwarinam yata pura. Any Matajis? Antapura, household. Striya, woman. Aprachat, he asked. Vimana, being very much anxious. Iva, like. Vedishat, O King Prachinabari. Api, whether. Va, your. Kushalam, good fortune. Rama, O you, beautiful woman. Sa Ishwarinam, with your mistress. Yatha, as. Pura, before. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. At that time, King Puranjan was a little anxious and he inquired from the household woman, My dear beautiful woman, are you and your mistress all very happy like before or not? Purport. In this verse, the word Vedishat indicates King Prachinabari. When a man becomes refreshed by association with devotees and awakes to Krishna consciousness, he consults the activities of his mind, namely thinking, feeling, and willing, and decides whether he should return to his material activities or stay steady in spiritual consciousness. The word Kushalam refers to that which is auspicious. One may make his home perfectly auspicious when he engages in devotional service to Lord Vishnu. When one is engaged in activities other than Vishnu Bhakti, or in other words, when one is engaged in material activities, he is always filled with anxieties. A sane man should consult his mind, its thinking, feeling, and willing processes, and decide how these processes should be utilized. If one always thinks of Krishna, feels how to serve him, and wills to execute the order of Krishna, it should be known that he has taken good instruction from his intelligence, which is called the mother. Although the king was refreshed, he nonetheless inquired about his wife. Thus, he was consulting, thinking, and willing how he could return to his steady, good consciousness. The mind may suggest that by Vishaya Bhoga or sense enjoyment, one can become happy. But when one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness, it does not derive happiness from material activities. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. One cannot be unattached to the sense objects unless he finds better engagement in devotional service. Param drishtva nivartate. One can cease from material activities only when one actually engages in devotional service. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Salakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं. वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमां विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने. नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे. नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरस्वे नमः. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते. तप्तकाञ्चन गौरांगी श्रीराधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपः तमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणम्. Hare Krishna. So I seek the blessings of His Grace Anandmai Prabhu and His Grace Radhesham Prabhu and all the assembled Vaishnavas, so that I can speak on this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam for my purification of heart. So in this particular section we are seeing King Puranjan, the allegory being explained by Narada Muni. So out of his compassion for King Prachina Parishad, who is the father of the Prachetas, so in order to elevate him from fruitive activities, So he is narrating this allegorical story so that he can take to the path of devotional service. So in this particular section, we see that King Puranjan, uh, he is compared with the conditioned soul. So in the previous chapters, the description was given about the city with the 9 gates, and then how he sees the beautiful lady, which is compared with the contaminated intelligence, and then later he goes for hunting, and then after getting tired because of hunger and thirst, and then he is searching, he is getting refreshed, and then after that he is inquiring this. So Prabhupada mentions that what is being refreshed is to actually come back to Krishna consciousness. When one revives his natural Krishna consciousness, he feels enlivened. So now he is inquiring uh, here in this particular verse, mentioning that how whether they are happy or not. So Prabhupada is mentioning that how after coming to Krishna consciousness also, sometimes one consults one's mind and thinks whether one should go back to his material activities or continue Krishna consciousness. So here Prabhupada is talking about how the mind by nature has this, does this three activities of thinking, feeling and willing. So these are all different levels, means in the intensity of one's thinking. So just like when someone like has eaten any gulab jamun, suppose in the past, and later Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Shri Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Mai Ki Jai. So that impression is formed in his mind. So there are three kinds of impressions formed: vritti, vasana and samskara. So for example, somebody may be traveling in a bus on the road, so he may see so many things while traveling, but we see that not everything no impresses us, or not everything forms an impression in our mind, right? We may see so many billboards, so many shops, so many people, right? So only we see that some specific impressions are formed in our mind. So that impression is vritti. So which impressions are formed? When the senses come in contact with the sense objects, and when we develop a desire to enjoy, then the impression is formed, which is called vritti. So otherwise we may see so many things, but those things may not create impression because we don't like them, or we don't want to enjoy them, right? So this is called vritti. Then when one starts contemplating on those sense objects and actually wants to enjoy it further, so the deeper desire to enjoy it, that is called as vasana. And when one actually starts engaging in sense gratification, and those impressions are created very deeply in one's mind, these are called as samskaras. When one starts engaging in sense gratification again and again and again, more and more. So so here, as Prabhupada is mentioning, this thinking, feeling and willing. So the mind by nature, conditioned mind by nature wants to have sense gratification. It looks for sense gratification. So and it acts through one's senses. So how the mind and intelligence work, it's very important thing to understand, because unless we understand this mechanism, we cannot actually control our mind and senses. So suppose I gave the example of somebody having the impression of eating a gulab jamun. So we'll see this particular situation, how the mind and intelligence acts. Suppose he is a diabetic patient, Suppose so, because of that, he is not supposed to eat gulab jamun. So now, when the person comes in contact with uh, gulab jamun, which is the sense object, so because the previous impressions are already there in his mind that he has eaten and it is tasty, so the mind starts thinking about that particular sense object, gulab jamun. That okay, because that impression is already formed in his mind from the past sense gratification. So he starts thinking, oh, this gulab jamun is very nice. So now, if the intelligence is strong, then he will be able to control his mind right there itself, stopping the mind to further think further. But if his intelligence is not very strong, then he will start contemplating more and more, remembering his previous impressions of tasting it and smelling it, all those things. So, if he starts contemplating, then he starts feeling more for it. And then he will start with his mind contaminated intelligence, he starts planning also how to get it, acquire it, thinking, feeling, and willing. No? So, actually, he may be, if he sees in a shop, he may actually want to go and purchase also. He actually plans for it. So, but if his intelligence is very strong, then he will say that no, you already have diabetes. Now, if you take this, you may further increase or you may die. So, if the intelligence is very strong, then he will give a strong warning to the mind, to stop it right there itself. Right. So, the mind is a source of all impressions. So our mind takes inputs from five senses. We have five senses: eyes, nose, ears, tongue, all this. So this palm is like a storehouse mind. So we take impressions from the five senses and it gets stored in the mind. So what you hear, what you smell, what you touch, what you taste, all this gets stored in the mind. So that's why a sadhaka has to be very careful about what he takes in his mind. Okay, because those create this vrittis, impressions, right? So if you are not careful right there, then later on it is very difficult to control our mind. It becomes difficult, right? And at the same time, a sadhaka has to keep his intelligence also very, very strong, so that he controls the mind. So we'll see from Bhagavad Gita how a devotee should actually deal with this desires of sense gratification. So in 2.70, in the in this verse, Prabhupada very nicely in the purport explains, Apuryamanam achila pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti sarve tadvad kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. So here Krishna is telling a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So such a wonderful analogy is given, that in an ocean we see that so many waves, so many rivers, they come and join the ocean. Recently we were in Puri, we saw the ocean. Like it appeared that there is no beginning, no end only to that ocean. It's very, very huge. So even many, many rivers and lakes may come and join in it, but we see that nothing will happen to the ocean, right? So in a similar way, he is saying that there may be some incessant flow of desires in a person, but if he is not striving to satisfy such desires, he alone can achieve peace. So Prabhupada gives a very important purport here, that as long as one has material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. Sometimes we think that actually means when we get some desires for sense gratification, we sometimes think that it should not be there only. So here, but Prabhupada is telling one important thing, that as long as we have, because we have this material body, we have desires for eating, sleeping, mating, defending. These desires will be there. But what Prabhupada tells is very important. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness, because he is satisfied in his heart. Means every soul has a loving relationship with Krishna. The soul has a desire to love and serve. So when it is satisfied in his loving service to Krishna, he is fully satisfied, right? So although these desires may be there, but he is not affected, just like the ocean which is full in itself. So like that, so a devotee is not affected by these desires. So Prabhupada is mentioning a Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything, because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Uh, and we sometimes somebody may have anxiety. What about my material needs related to the body? No problem, because Krishna is a controller, maintainer. So devotee has faith that he will take care of everything. So in that sense, he is not disturbed for his basic needs of eating, sleeping, all these things, right? So Prabhupada is saying desires may come in him like the waves of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities and he is not even slightly disturbed by the desires for sense gratification. This is a proof of a Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Okay, so so the desires may come because of this body, but one is not affected. So one should be careful not to identify with one's mind. So we have this gross body made of this gross five elements, and we have the subtle body which is mind, intelligence, and false ego. So we are not this gross body, and we are also not this subtle body. The problem is, although we are in Krishna consciousness, we came to Krishna consciousness, but still we many times identify with this gross body and also with the subtle body. We think that we are this body, and we also think that we are this mind. So because of strongly identifying with this mind, we actually start fulfilling the desires of our mind. Whatever the mind says, we tend to follow. That's the problem. So one should be very, very careful not to identify with one's mind. So in the 5th canto, 6th chapter, very nicely the description is given how a sadhaka should be very, very careful in dealing with one's mind. Okay, so in this section, it's mentioned that how Lord Rishabdev is not attracted by the yogic powers. So, so in that connection, why he is not wanting them, why he is neglecting them? So that time Sukadeva Goswami is mentioning that how a devotee is careful not to be allured by all these opulences. So in that connection, it talks about how a devotee is careful in dealing with one's mind. From text 2, no, chapter 6, the activities of Lord Rishabdev, text 2. So I'll read the translation because there are few verses here. Sri Sukadeva Goswami replied, "My dear king, you have spoken correctly. However, after capturing animals, a cunning hunter does not put faith in them, for they might run away. Similarly, those who are advanced in spiritual life do not put faith in the mind. Indeed, they always remain vigilant and watch the mind's action." Okay. So here it is mentioned that how a devotee should be very, very vigilant and watch the mind's actions. Because we should understand that our mind is conditioned mind, conditioned for sense gratification from so many millions of lifetimes we have been doing eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Right? So the mind by nature has the desire to do sense gratification. Right? But if he is very vigilant, then he will guard one's mind against this, one's mind against all these things. So in this Prabhupada is quoting that 18.15, where Krishna says the acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up but should be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls, because by following this yajna, dana, tapa, one can purify one's mind. So Prabhupada mentions that how by chanting Hare Krishna, Sankirtanagram, one should control one's mind. This is the tapasya or sacrifice which is mentioned for the Kali Yuga. So we see that here Prabhupada is mentioning about uh, the hunter. So sometimes we see in circus, like people, they bring wild animals. Like in one video, we saw this crocodile. One person, he shows to the audience that he is going to keep his hand in the crocodile. So he is very overconfident, and he shows, see my hand, like this. He waves, and then the crocodile has opened its mouth, and then he keeps his hand inside, and then he thinks that according to his understanding, the crocodile is supposed to keep it like that only. But then the crocodile immediately closes its mouth, and then he is injured severely, and then he has to go to hospital. He has to run, right, because of his overconfidence and keeping his hand in crocodile's mouth. So same way, a devotee should not become overconfident in dealing with Maya. Sometimes when we keep practicing Krishna consciousness, we think that now I have become very advanced and I can deal with Maya in the form of women or money. We think that I am capable of dealing with all these things, right? Like Prabhupada gives the example of electricity, right? So when it is properly used, it can be used for cooling or heating, all these things. But same electricity, if you don't use properly, you may get shock also, right? Same energy. So the same way, the material energy can be engaged in the service of the Lord, Yukta Vairagya. But then before Yukta Vairagya, we should have Vairagya. Renunciation means we should be detached from it. So otherwise, it can be dangerous. So same way, uh, so a devotee should be very, very cautious while dealing with material energy. We should not think that I am advanced enough to deal. So one should render service under the direction of the spiritual master or authority, so that will not fall prey to the mind's dictations. Hmm. So another verse here, in the next verse, it is mentioned, all the learned scholars have given their opinion. The mind is by nature very restless, and one should not make friends with it. If we place full confidence in the mind, it may cheat us at any moment. Even Lord Shiva became agitated upon seeing the Mohini form of Lord Krishna, and Saubari Muni also fell down from the mature stage of yogic perfection. Hmm. So Prabhupada in the verse, in the purport mentions Manashashtan Indriyani Prakristani Karshati. How the mind and senses, how they struggle for sense gratification in this material world. So Prabhupada also mentions Matra Swastra Duhitrava Navyukta Sanubhava Balavan Indriya Gramo Vidvamsa Vikarshati. How one should be very careful even while dealing with one's mother, sister, or daughter. So one should be careful in dealing with one's mind, as here it is mentioned. So here, the conditioned mind actually is our worst enemy. As Krishna mentions, one whose mind is controlled, it's our best friend. If it is uncontrolled, it's our worst enemy. So in our case, actually it is our worst enemy. Actually, as long as we are in this material world, we should be very, very careful. It's our worst enemy, right? So we are not fully spiritual. We have not fully spiritualized our mind, right? So that it can always capture us. So as here Prabhupada is mentioning, if somebody is careless, one may get trapped for sense gratification. So even the great personalities, as here Prabhupada is mentioning about Lord Shiva and Saubari, how they got distracted. Huh? So these things are mentioned so that the sadhaka is very careful. Uh, Not that means we should not think that I am very, very advanced, I can do anything. Huh? Then another verse, fourth verse, here it's mentioned, an unchaste woman is very easily carried away by paramours. And it sometimes happens that her husband is violently killed by her paramours. If the yogi gives his mind a chance and does not restrain it, his mind will give facility to enemies like lust, anger, and greed, and they will doubtlessly kill the yogi. Hmm. So, very nice analogy is given here. How if a woman is not protected by the husband, she may be carried away by the paramours. So, same way, mind, if it is not protected by Krishna conscious intelligence, it can be carried out by lust, greed, anger, all these things. Right? So, the whole thing starts with the thinking. Dhyayato Vishyan Pumsha Sangasteshopajayate Sangayate Kamat Krodopajayate. So, Dhyayato Vishyan Pumsha. When one starts contemplating on sense objects, then one actually develops attachment for those sense objects. So that's why when the mind starts contemplating on sense objects for sense gratification, that's the time we should immediately cut off the mind from those sense objects with our intelligence, Krishna conscious intelligence. So that's why our intelligence should be very, very strong. So the intelligence should always be guided by Guru Sadhu Shastra. That's how the intelligence is nourished. So we see that very clearly we can also observe that when we don't regularly read and hear, when we don't regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam, study Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada books, we see that our intelligence becomes very, very weak. And we see that our mind takes a ride. So that famous analogy is given, no? Like chariot. The body compared with chariot, and the chariot driver is compared with intelligence and all those things. So in that we see that if the horses are very strong and the chariot driver is weak, we can see that the whole chariot can go to the fields. If the horses are attracted by grass, then it will go away, right? It will fall in the fields, right? But if the chariot driver is strong, then he can control the horses and keep it on the right track. So in a similar way, if we nourish our intelligence regularly and make it very strong, then we can keep it in the right direction and go back home, back to Godhead, right? So we see that especially while chanting, if you don't read and hear regularly, we can see that the mind goes all over the world, right? So many thoughts, desires come, so many plannings we make, and then because our intelligence is not strong, we cannot control it, and then whole chanting goes wayward, right? So that's why we have to make sure that our spiritual nourishment is going on very well. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given us that 8 hours for this body, 8 hours for service, and 8 hours directly for sadhana. So because that will nourish our soul. Just like we nourish our body with 3 times prasadam, same way we have to nourish our soul, right? Because the soul is also hungry. The soul is hungry for Krishna, right? So when you nourish the soul with Krishna consciousness, then it is satisfied. Okay. So the mind is like a child. Okay. The child cries, right? So when it is not satisfied, right? So but when you feed the child, then it is satisfied, right? So same way when we nourish our soul, then it is satisfied. If it is not satisfied, it is dissatisfied, then it comes out in the form of lust, greed, anger, all this. The mind hankers for sense gratification, right? So here in the purport also Prabhupada is mentioning that how the mind sometimes suggests for Vishaya Bhoga or sense enjoyment, right? But when one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness, Visha Vinivartante Niraharasadena Rasavarjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate. Right? So as is told in the beginning about samskaras, so in our mind there are so many negative samskaras of sense gratification. We might have engaged in various forms of sense gratification, which have filled our mind with so many negative samskaras. So His Grace Radheshampur says the example of like wet cement. No, sometimes when there is a wet cement and somebody steps, so it remains like that later on when it becomes dry. So those steps remain like that. So these are like our negative samskaras which are formed in our mind. So later if you want to level it, you have to again fill it with cement and level it. So same way there are so many negative samskaras formed in our mind, right, because of sense gratification. So now we have to replace those negative samskaras with positive samskaras. So we have to engage in the 9 process of devotional service. So His Holiness Rompa Swami Maharaj is telling that among the 9 process of devotional service, whichever process a devotee develops higher taste for, right? So higher taste means not Govindas. We're talking about uh, we are talking about Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Sparanam, all this. So yeah, Prasadam is also Krishna. You can remember Krishna. But in the 9 processes, especially Shravanam, Kirtanam, so if we develop higher taste for this, so Maharaj is telling that we should try to do those activities again, more and more, so that we develop higher taste for those activities. So when we do those activities again, so these negative samskaras which are created in our mind will be removed by these positive samskaras. Hmm? So when we hear about Krishna, how he is so loving, all attractive, how he is filled with so many opulences, and how he is merciful to his devotees. So all this, when we keep hearing the pastimes, the qualities of the Lord, and when we understand that how Krishna's mercy is so much coming in our lives, right? And we start developing that attraction to Krishna, right? So slowly, gradually, once mind is getting attracted to Krishna's Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela, all this. So then these negative samskaras are replaced by positive samskaras. So like that, a sadhaka has to be very vigilant in avoiding, first of all, avoiding all the negative inputs, because already our mind is like a garbage, right? You see, like garbage dump, it is filled with so much garbage, right? So we should not again fill it with more garbage. Hmm? We should now remove that garbage and fill it with good things, right? Means Krishna conscious activities. So everybody has a free will. Uh, the living entity is given the free will either to engage in Krishna service or Maya service. So that free will is there. So we have to use our free will properly. In the association of devotees, it becomes all the more easy to practice Krishna consciousness. So a sadhaka should continuously satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridhavrata. With great determination, one should chant the glories of the Lord continuously. So we see that this word satatam is many times used. Nityam bhagavatam sevaya. Nityam bhagava sevaya. It's not that no sapta only for 7 days or once in a while bhagavat seva, not like that. So nityam means always, regularly. One should hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So His Holiness Jayadeva Swami Maharaj was telling that just like one cleans one's room every day. So one should not think that, okay, yesterday I cleaned my room, so done. No, again the dust comes, so again we clean it. So actually, because of being in this material world, actually already previous impressions are there, and also sometimes we see some negative things or hear some negative things. Those impressions are also formed. So if you regularly hear, then the negative conditionings will be gone, and with that Krishna conscious intelligence, we can control our mind. So that's why hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very important, very vital for all the devotees. So in that way, one should be very, very alert, and also one should engage oneself continuously in Krishna conscious activities. So like it is Radhesham Prabhu says, like we have 24 hours, but we should plan for 26 hours, because at no point of time we should be free. Because Krishna Bhulya Jeev Bhogavancha Kare Chapatiya Mayatara. So either there is Krishna or there is Maya. Krishna Surya Saman, Maya Hi Andhakar. So the moment we forget Krishna, immediately Maya is there to capture us. Right? So there is no other third thing. So devotee should understand that savai pumsham paro dharmo ito bhaktir adokshajay ahetuki apratita eyatma suprasiddhati. Right? We should be rendering uninterrupted, unmotivated devotional service. Right? So in spiritual world, we are supposed to render devotional service eternally. Not that, okay, I'll serve Krishna for no, some time and then I'll take a break. I want to relax. No, not like that. So that's why Maya also is checking before we go to spiritual world whether we are really ready to serve Krishna eternally. Right? So that's why Maya is testing us thoroughly. It's like a virus scanner, right? We see in computers virus scanner. It checks for any viruses, right? So same way Maya is checking how many viruses we still have, right? Right. So until the viruses are completely removed, Maya doesn't allow us to go to spiritual world. So in one sense, actually, we should be grateful to Maya, because through Maya we come to know what is our weakness, what is our material attachment. So when we understand what is our material attachment, then we can actually work upon it to overcome those material attachments. Especially when we chant, we see that mind goes to so many material attachments, right? Those are our real material attachments. So we should really work upon giving up those material attachments. So how can we give up? When we understand that these material attachments are temporary and illusory, right? So when we understand this, then only we can give up. Otherwise, it is difficult. And on the other hand, we should also develop higher taste for Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious activities. Both this have to be done. So then it will be possible for us to give up Maya and take to Krishna. Hmm? Then only no, we'll be satisfied completely. Right? The Mayavadis, they give up Maya, but they don't take to Krishna. So again they fall down because there is no higher activity, no higher engagement. Again there is fall down. But the devotees, they give up Maya, but at the same they take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. So Krishna takes care of them because they are constantly no, Daivi Hesha Gunamayi Mam Maya Duratya Mameve Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantate. So the famous example is given, the story, like one person goes to one house. When he opens the gate, suddenly he sees a big German Shepherd dog running towards him. So immediately, no, it was about to jump on him. So immediately he calls his friend. So the friend immediately says, stop that dog. So immediately that dog stops. So in a similar way, Maya always is ready to attack. But if you take shelter of Krishna, who is the owner of Maya, who takes charge of Maya, then immediately Maya stops. So we should endeavor to constantly take shelter of Krishna. Many times we fear Maya. Oh, Maya, Maya, Maya. Then we become actually Maya conscious. Right? But actually, okay, yeah, we should be fearful. It's not that we should not be fearful. But the other side is very important. That is taking shelter of Krishna. Right? Because if we take shelter of Krishna, then only we will be able to give up Maya. Just meditating on Maya, actually we cannot give up Maya. No, means we should understand it is temporary, illusory, that is there. But we should also firmly take shelter of Krishna through the 9 pros of devotional service, especially through Shravanam and Kirtanam. So in this way, we will be able to actually control our mind and senses and never go again back to sense gratification. As in this verse, it is mentioned that while practicing Krishna consciousness, one's conditioned mind might sometimes think about, oh, whether I should again go back for sense gratification. But if one's intelligence is very strong, Krishna consciousness through Krishna conscious nourishment, then he will be able to neglect it, right? So Prabhupada said that those who come to Krishna consciousness, they are fortunate. Those who don't come, they are unfortunate. But those who come and leave Krishna consciousness, they are most unfortunate. So we should not become most unfortunate by giving up Krishna consciousness. We should understand that actually we are not qualified for getting this Krishna consciousness. It's by mercy of Srila Prabhupada and all the parampara that we have received this great fortune of practicing Krishna consciousness and becoming blissful. That's what the soul is hankering for. So we should utilize this opportunity by taking Krishna consciousness seriously. Thank you very much. Any one question if anybody has? Or
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Very nice illustrations and examples with which you explained this translation purport. Thank you, Prabhu. So there are three stages. One is pure devotee who has no desires, no material desires. Then there is a practicing devotee who has material desires, but who is not supposed to exercise them with his action senses or karmendriyas. Then there are other living entities who have material desires and who opt for sense gratification. So we can see these three categories. So one who is in the second category, one of the things you said is one has to take shelter of the higher intelligence by which one subdues the fickle mind and the impure senses. You know, now that is definitely mentioned in the Gita. And Gita also says about param drishtva nivartate. Besides taking shelter of intelligence, one has to take shelter of higher taste. So can you say something more about that higher taste?
yeah. So regarding developing higher taste, so there are 9 processes for devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasanam, all this. So a devotee can try to develop higher taste for any of these 9 activities, like Shravanam. So hearing about the glories of the Lord. So when we hear the glories of the Lord, that how Lord is so wonderful, how He has so many opulences, how He has so many wonderful qualities, and how He is all merciful. So like this, when we hear more and more about Krishna, then Krishna becomes attractive for us, and then no, then we replace Maya with Krishna. So like that we can develop higher taste by hearing more and more about Krishna. And also at the same time we hear also about how Maya is temporary and illusory. So that way we give up Maya. So any of the 9 processes, but especially in Kali Yuga, the recommended process is Shravanam and Kirtanam. So the more and more we engage in this Shravanam and Kirtanam, we develop higher taste. But it has to be done properly, in the sense attentively, like hearing, like in the morning also is Grace Revati Raman Prabhu was telling that to actually attentively hear, one should be wrapped in one's mind. So one should be pure in one's mind. And to be pure in one's mind, one should be pure in one's actions. And to be pure in one's actions, one should be pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So, if we regulate these activities, yukta hara viharasya, and engage all this in a Krishna conscious way, then our mind will be pure, then we can hear attentively. And also not only hearing, so we should do Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. So when what we hear, we should contemplate and also see that how we can apply it practically in our lives. So then we get realization, right, of what we actually hear. We hear so many things, but when we don't apply what we hear, we don't get realization. So that is how when we actually realize what we heard, then actually we develop faith. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitramedamuttamam Pratyakshavagam Dharmam Susukam Kartam Avyam. Pratyakshavagam. So you have to yourself experience it. You can experience it. This knowledge is not something what you call impractical. You can actually experience this knowledge for yourself. Like for example, like Prabhupada tells how the hippies, they were addicted to so many bad habits, uh, meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, all this. But then when we started hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the holy names, that they gave up all this bad activities, sinful activities, and they took to Krishna consciousness and they completely got transformed. Previously, they used to have externally, internally, both they got transformed. They were having big, big hairs, not taking bath, uh, and internally, like having so many bad habits. But then when they took to Krishna consciousness, externally also they started wearing dhoti kurta, tilak, and Himala, and internally so much transformation. They gave up all the sinful activities and started hearing and chanting. So uh, it's a gradual process. So we should have utsaha, nishchaya, dhairyat, enthusiasm, patience, and confidence. So for a sadhaka, yeah, sometimes these desires may come, but we should enthusiastically keep hearing and chanting. Over a period of time, definitely we'll uh, develop that higher taste. We should have confidence in this process, because we see that in the past also so many people have practiced, like Valmiki and all, they got transformed, right? And even now, like we see recently, Prabhupada transformed the hippies. So with that confidence, we should continue. And definitely, if we practice as per the acharyas, definitely we will also develop that higher taste. This is, can I answer?
Hare Krishna. I can add one point. Recently, I was studying the same verse purport from Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishtva Nivartate. In that, Baladev Devotion says that in knowledge there are two aspects of knowledge. One is the Viveka Buddhi, to discriminate between what is right to do and what is wrong to do. And with higher intelligence, we stick to the right and give up the wrong, correct, no? But there is another type of intelligence develops where we develop attraction for the Nama Rupa Guna Leela of the Lord. Name, form, qualities, pastimes, and activities of the Lord. The result of which should be, he says, one should develop a strong attraction for the deities, the beauty of the deities. So when he looks at the deity, he remembers the Shastra, which talks about the merciful nature of the Lord and his multifarious, sublime qualities of the Lord. And when he reads the Shastra, he remembers the deity. So in this way, one develops a higher taste by seeing the face of the Lord, and by that higher taste, he is able to say no to Maya, as it says.
Grace Anand, you want to add in? Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samveda Gaurav.